prestigioso antropólogo de la ecología, Tim Ingold, es además un pensador original. Su obra plantea nuestra relación con el entorno y el papel de la creatividad y la tecnología en nuestra vida. En su libro dedicado a las líneas, nos invita a pensar que todo, también nuestra relación con el planeta y el desarrollo sostenible, ocurre a lo largo de líneas entretejidas o interconectadas, y no comparte la tesis de los que señalan que vivimos en la era del Antropoceno. Te invitamos a conocerle.
My view of that is that we should recognize that the world has never been in a steady state, that part of the problem with talking about change, such as climate change, is we suppose that we're in the middle of a transition from one point, one state of affairs, to another state of affairs, and that we're somehow on a line between the two. I would take the view that the world has, the planet that we live on has never been in a steady state. It has always been fluctuating and moving, and people have been able to live on this planet for many, many thousands of years, and they have done so through continually responding to, being aware of, attentive to, and responding to the movements and fluctuations of the environments that they inhabit. Part of our problem now, I think, is that we have lost that immediate sensibility, that sensitivity to things in our environment. We look to science, we look to other agencies to tell us what is going on in the environment, rather than responding to it directly. So I think we would get to a more sustainable world if we developed those sensibilities so that we could more directly attend to and respond to the movements of all the things, beings, the weather, and so on, that is around us. Yes and no. I find, like many others, I find the word Anthropocene deeply troubling because it seems very anthropocentric, because we are not the only inhabitants of the planet, and there are other forces and beings that can create enormous movements in it, but also because it puts the responsibility on what has happened to the planet now on humanity in general, as though we all did it. Some people have suggested we should replace it with the term Capitalocene, because we know that what has caused so many major changes that are going on now are large-scale industrial development, and it is absurd to suppose that all human beings throughout the planet are responsible for these changes. So that's, in the sense, I have doubts about it. But on the other hand, I think it has served, I don't think it's really a term of particular scientific validity, and I think these attempts to prove, by geologists, to prove that the Anthropocene has really happened or really counts as an epoch are a bit foolish. But as a rhetorical term, it has opened up discussions and debates. For example, bringing together artists and geologists, thinking about people and thinking about the earth in ways that haven't happened before. So although the term itself is deeply problematic, its rhetorical effect has been quite positive, I think, in opening up all kinds of areas of discussion that had been pretty much closed off before. No, it's not in our hands. That would be foolish to suppose it is. I mean, that something could happen with the sun, and the earth could get burnt up, and we could do absolutely nothing about it. So, and we can't control the sun. So it's not in our hands. But nevertheless, we have responsibilities, and our responsibilities are to the earth and to subsequent generations, to the future. But by the earth there, I don't really mean earth, the planet. I mean earth as the soil in which we live, the environments that we care for. So our responsibilities are about caring for those elements of the world that we ourselves engage with in our lives. You know, I don't know. In the 1960s and 70s, everybody was worrying about overpopulation of the planet. They weren't worrying then about global warming. The discourse, the disaster scenario at those days, not so long ago, 40, 50 years ago, was very much that the planet is becoming far too heavily populated and won't be able to sustain that number. Since then, the other discourses have taken over, and the argument has always been that there is enough to feed everybody if only the resources were more equitably distributed. And that may be so up to a point. But at the back of my mind, I still wonder to what extent the problems that we're experiencing all over the globe at the moment do come down to the fact that there are an awful lot of people. So we all expect that the biggest source of conflict, resource conflict, in the next 50 years is likely to be water scarcity. Why is there water scarcity? Well, partly because of extremely irresponsible use of water in industry, in agriculture, but partly because parts of the world are drying up, and there are a lot of people trying to get a small amount of water. And so I think I would be foolish to say that I know the answer about human population, and I think anybody else would be foolish to claim the same thing. The fact is that we just don't know how many people this planet can sustain. Nobody knows. I learned a great deal from my dad, not about mycology, but about how to do science and about how to live. And his science was a very homely kind of science, that he would go for walks along the riverbank, pick up test tubes full of water, which were full of microscopic fungi, and then go home, and in our dining room table he would have a microscope, and he would look and observe what was happening with these fungi, and be constantly discovering new things. And this was, I felt, how science ought to be done. It involves a sort of love for the things that you're studying, care, draftsmanship, close observation, a real sense of involvement with the world that you're working with. And he used to be very upset about the way in which his area of science was moving, where people seemed not to even recognize a living organism because they were just sitting behind computers and analyzing data banks and things, and he couldn't understand what all this was about. And I really feel that we need to get back to a kind of science that is democratic, that anybody can do, that involves close involvement with what we call the natural world. And there are a lot of movements in that direction. It's not all bad, that much is happening along those lines now. But there's a lot more still to do.